Welcome to Eat Tea with GOTB. We are back after a very busy WFW, Women's Football Weekend, where we managed to get to 3 games. So if we're in any way incoherent, me especially, I'll put my apologies in there, okay? Shall we go for it?
Yep.
I'm Rachel.
I'm Sophie.
And this is Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. Alright, firstly, this is your weekly reminder to subscribe and to like, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on your podcast apps and all that business, so that you don't miss an episode. We do like to drop a little bonus episode with a super sub every now and then, so if you're subscribed, you won't miss it. But on today's show, we're going to look at all the action from Women's Football Weekend, including the derbies, the goals that shouldn't have been, and the goals that should, and your standout moment of the weekend. Sophie, so get your thinking cap on. We will check in on the championship as it races towards a conclusion, see if there's any changes that have happened. We'll also look ahead to the Conti Cup final, which is the first piece of silverware of the season for the WSL teams, which is exciting, and we're going to answer some of your questions because we've got quite a few in, so thank you in advance for those. Right, firstly, run through the results. Manchester City 3, Manchester United 1, Jess Park with 2 goals and Bunny Shaw, and then an own goal from Kasperai. Everton 0, Liverpool 0. Bristol 0, Spurs 1, Bethany England with the goal there. Leicester 2, Brighton 3, Rantala, Petterman, Haley, Robinson and Turland with the goals there. West Ham 0, Chelsea 2, Aggie Beaver-Jones and Erin Cuthbert with the goals. And then Aston Villa 1, Arsenal 3, Salmon, Palova, Wubben-Moy and Stina Ballerina Blackstenius with third there. So we will start with the Manchester Derby. That's where we went first on Saturday. 40,000 people at the Etihad Stadium for this one. Quite a fun day all round.
It was the first time we've been back, I think, since before the COVID pandemic. So
oh wow, God, that was ages ago.
Yeah, that was ages ago. So I think it was like 2019 when we last there. So it was good to be back. It's a lovely stadium. I think we've been to see a couple of concerts there as well, so quite familiar as well for us in terms of...
Is that where we saw
Beyonce
and Jay-Z?
Yes.
And then we spent an hour and a half trying to get out the car park.
Yes.
That also reminds me of Aston Villa's car park. We'll get to that. A good opening 20 minutes from Manchester United. There was a late change in the back line for Manchester City. Could have been an opportunity maybe for United to capitalise. They didn't really, and it's kind of the story of their season. They played well in the beginning, didn't get any goals, and then suddenly the game turned.
They played well without real cutting edge, I'd say.
Yeah.
I know Chiara Keating made a couple of good saves, but they weren't particularly difficult saves, if I'll say that.
Quality chances.
Yeah, and I think that, so the best one I think was for Nikita Paris early on when Jace cut it back to her and she was unmarked, and she was so frustrated with herself. She had her head in her hands because she knew she should have done better with it. But I think, so while they were positive United in terms of that, especially that right flank.
And the press.
And they were energetic, that's something they didn't do against Arsenal. But they didn't really have any cutting edge to it. And there was a moment, I think, when Ella Toon won the ball back and ran into space, and she just needed to shoot, and she was trying to work it towards goal, and it just sort of ended in nothing, and it just kind of summed up their kind of afternoon. And yes, so they were good for 20 minutes, but they weren't that good. They were just on top. And then City just needed to go through the gears, I think. They needed to adjust to their new defensive line. It's hard for someone like Alana Kennedy, who's gone through the warm-up thinking she's going to be on the bench, to suddenly being told she has to start. So it takes a little time for the player and for the team around her to adjust to that situation. And once they did, I think they ramped it up and everything was decided by Jess Park in that centre of the midfield.
Unreal. She got the first goal, which should have been disallowed because Bunny Shaw was offside in the build-up. But they did have the ball on the back of the net within 3 times within 8 minutes. Now, one of them was correctly ruled offside, but it just felt like suddenly that 8 minutes, Man City were like, hang on, we found our feet.
There was a moment where Jess Park, I think, won it in the middle and got into space, and she took aim from like 25 yards out. Marriott's just managed to get across and scramble and tip it behind. But that was like the pivotal moment where the sort of the momentum kind of swung towards City, and they started really ramping up the gears and putting the pressure on and being really intense as they were going forward. And as I said before, Jess Park was at the heart of it, but everyone went up a gear, I think. And yes, that goal shouldn't have stood. It was definitely offside in the build-up, but I think it was coming whatever way. Like, they were going to score one way or another.
Yeah. And then Bunny Shaw in the second half got a really quick goal, and I kind of thought to myself, oh God, there's going to be a high score here. And she made history. 68 goals in 82 games, 17th goal this season. So it makes the highest scoring Man City player, is that right?
All time.
Wow.
Highest scorer. Goal
Incredible.
Scorer. Incredible for her.
What a place to do it.
Yeah, what a place to do it, but also the goal. She just kind of ran through Manchester United defence as if they weren't there. It was a lovely ball from Jess Park as well, just to top off her afternoon. But yeah, she just literally ran through them like they weren't in there. They tried to trip her up. She wasn't going down. She was just going straight for the goal. And she did what she always does and finished it past Mary up. So yeah, a real good moment for her.
Manchester United did get one back, an own goal deflecting off Kasperai, and I think they'll be really frustrated about that. Now, I don't think there's anything Chiara Keaton could have done, but the goal difference is so important now for Man City. Currently, that's what separates them from Chelsea. It's 2 at the moment. It could have been 1. You know, it's going to potentially come down to that, which is really exciting. But we have talked before about how important clean sheets are for Man City, and even more so now in this title race.
It's all about these small margins now. And Gareth Taylor said after the game that he thinks it will go down to the end of the final day of the season. I think it will too. I do think people are saying Chelsea have the harder running just because in terms of the quantity of games.
Yeah, but Man City have to play
Man City have to play Liverpool and Arsenal, and Chelsea have to play Liverpool and United. But United at the moment.
We'll see. It was Manchester City's...
It will go down to that final day, I think.
Maybe. It was Manchester City's 11th successive league win, which is pretty impressive. Now, we were going to touch on what now for Manchester United, but I think we can maybe touch on that with some of the questions.
Okay.
Spoiler alert. That we get later on in the episode. We're going to move on to probably, sorry guys, but the least exciting game of the weekend, the Merseyside derby, which was a bit of a shame because it delivered so much last year. At the same ground, really exciting, under the lights on a Friday night, really enthralling game. Not to be on Sunday, 1:00 kickoff. Wasn't a classic. Really stop-start in the first half. There were so many injuries. It was 8 minutes of additional time, I think it was, in the first half. So that gives you an idea of how many times players were going down. I think the physios probably had the most to do in the first half. So it was kind of hard for either team to really build up any rhythm, and Liverpool probably edged it, but then Everton had the better of the second half.
Yeah, I think I was saying to you that it was kind of Brian Sorensen's game plan, I think, to keep it tight in that first half. And yes, it was scrappy and Liverpool did edge it. They had a few good chances and they were creating more. But I think Brian Sorensen knew that as long as he got them to half-time still in the game, they had every chance to kind of put the foot on the gas a little bit in the second half. And I think it was really interesting how well organised they were. You know, they have had their injury problems. A couple came back. Vea's in. But yeah, no. So
I want a t-shirt that just says Vea's in.
For those who don't know, that it's a running thing on the press conferences on a Friday with Brian Sorensen, as he brings his almost a list every week of injuries that Everton have suffered or has still got going on during the week, that will be out for the weekend. And ever since something like the 25th of November, Vea has been out, and he always goes Vea out. So this week we got very excited when Vea was in. So I think we need a t-shirt with that on. So it was great to see her back healthy and fit and back on the pitch. She came on in the second half. But I thought he did set them up really well. They all are so well drilled, and they completely smothered Fuka Nagano in Liverpool's midfield. She's their kind of playmaker. She's where all of the strings come through, and they didn't really give them a chance or time on the ball in the second half, and it allowed them to push forward, and they were finding the space with Heather Payne and Emma Bissell out on the flanks. And then it really changed when Martina Piemonte came on.
Yeah.
Proper number 9 hold-up striker who really, she holds the ball up so well and everything can then go in around her, so she'll hold the ball up and link up the play. So I thought that changed, and Lucy Hope agonisingly hit the under bit of the crossbar, and then it was Van Havermaet, I think, who stung the gloves of Rachel Laws. So yeah, they had their chances. They couldn't make it count. That's been a theme of their season in terms of when they do fashion opportunities.
Yeah,
they're not clinical enough with them. But I think they were on top in that second half. There was a bit towards the final stages, the last 5 minutes, where they were like, we are going for this. Justin Van Havermaet went up front, and suddenly the whole structure of their team just completely fell apart, and Liverpool kept breaking through them. I was like, what are you doing? Like, I know you want to win this game, but you don't want to lose it.
Matt Beard spoke afterwards about his disappointment at the pitch. He thought the grass was too long, it was too dry. I would say it's not the reason they didn't win.
Has he seen Prenton Park?
I mean, yeah, okay, but like this is a Premier League ground. You expect
I understand
the
that, but
you
can't blame the pitch for that.
No, you can't. But it was interesting. Brian Sorensen said afterwards, if you told him that they'd get a draw out of it, he probably would have been happy. But then at the same time, after watching the second half, he was a bit like frustrated that they didn't get the win in the end. But yes, as we said, wasn't a classic. We then were going via the games we saw, because then we raced down the M6 for Aston Villa versus Arsenal, which then was very helpfully delayed by 45 minutes again. This time I would say, and you would say, not really Arsenal's fault if there's a truck overturned on the M40, everyone gets funneled down the M1 and it creates like a ridiculous backlog. I saw today, traffic for miles. So I'd say a similar situation for them, and it meant that it delayed their arrival. But not ideal preparation when you've had a similar kind of delay the week before, just probably annoying.
Yeah, I don't think it will have messed with them like the Sox did. I think you can prepare for being late. It's not like it's altering your preparations. You still get to the ground and you still warm up and you still do all of the things that you need to do to get in place, whereas the sock thing was right bang in the middle just before.
There were some very funny tweets about the whole thing, by the way, guys.
It's hilarious.
You guys out there with the tweets, you're very smart and very funny.
Us giggle.
I had a great time.
But yeah, she was proper in stitches when she was on Twitter earlier.
You were impressed with Villa's game plan though, because you felt like in the first half it was exactly what Carla Ward had set them out to do.
Carla Ward and her walkie-talkie
up in the box
because she wasn't very well, so she's walkie-talking her instructions down to the touchline, and I think she would have been really impressed with the way her team set up in the first half. Rachel Daly was set up as a number 10, I think, but she was actually, I think in that first half played everything from a 6 to an 8 to a 10. They were playing like a 5-3-2 formation, so it made it really compact and really hard for Arsenal to break down, and we know what Arsenal are like with their low block. When they face a low block,
Arsenal, we know what you're like.
They really, really struggle.
Everyone knows what you're like with the low block.
And that's what Aston Villa tried to exploit, and then they were like, we're just going to pick them off when we get the opportunity with the pace of Ebony Salmon. It didn't quite come from her pace, but it came from a kind of transition moment where they were able to move up the field and she got her goal.
I'm going to put in here, for those on YouTube, the stats after the game, because it's absolutely ridiculous, because in Villa's side it's just like 1-1-1-1-1, and in Arsenal it's like 37 shots, 13 on target, and yet Villa just needed the one to get the goal. So that was pretty ridiculous. Palova did get the equaliser in the second half. I think the introduction of Blackstenius made all the difference. She went into the number 9, Russo dropped a bit deeper, and we both kind of said, actually, the team that set up yesterday probably would have done better against Chelsea, and the team that set up against Chelsea would have done better against Aston Villa. So I think her coming on made a difference. They just looked more threatening. They were literally throwing everything and the kitchen sink.
I think they did change things up a little bit before she came on.
It did a bit, but I do think she made a big difference.
They came out in that second half full of intensity, and they were pressing and deciding when to press Villa's back line when they had the ball. That was non-existent in the first half, whereas in the second half, as soon as Villa's back line got the ball, Alessia Russo started that press and they were on them and they forced mistakes and they forced turnovers of possession. And then it was about doing stuff with those turnovers. And they were starting to move, they were dragging Villa players around the pitch because you didn't really know where the attack was coming from. So they were on the left and then they were on the right. And I thought was really useful weapon was Leah Williamson started to do those crossfield balls that she's known for. Beth Mead the same, both on that right hand side over to the left. And it started to cause a lot of confusion within Villa's ranks. And then the second goal, Lotte Wubben-Moy's goal, was from the other side with Alessia Russo providing the cross for Lotte Wubben-Moy to head home, and it just kind of gave them a puzzle, I guess.
There was a beautiful cross in from Beth Mead, pinpoint to find Caitlin Ford, and I have to say Annalise, unbelievable in between the sticks. It could have been far worse in that second half. She pulled off some unbelievable saves. But I also think there's an element of some players just not being confident, maybe not being in their best form and therefore not feeling confident when those opportunities arise, and sometimes make the decision rather than shooting to pass it. And I think there was a bit of that, like even just watching it, I'd be like, Jesus, just shoot. Like, there was elements of that. Like, but they got the goals in the end. We had Lotte Wubben-Moy, as you said, with that header, really passionate celebration in front of the Arsenal fans, which was lovely to see. And then maybe a peak Stina goal, because it doesn't matter what happens to Stina Blackstenius, she will do everything she needs to put the ball in the back of the net. She was offside in the build-up and then fell over kind of nothing and got back up, handled the ball as she fell, got back up. All the Aston Villa defenders were just kind of standing there, so she nutmegged 3 of them and scored. Like, that's like, there's so many bits of that on their own.
It was a comedy of errors from both Stina and her slip and the handball, and then the officials for missing it all.
All of them, not just one.
I have to admit, I didn't actually see the goal because I was too busy, literally in stitches, because all I saw was Stina go across the turf, and I was literally just like in stitches giggling, and then I looked up and the ball was in the back of the net. I was like, I don't know how I got there.
This is it though, I think, and I'm a big fan of Stina, but I think things like that can happen to a player and they'll think, I've missed the chance. But she won't do that. She'll get up and she'll, even if she's fallen over or if she's done a pirouette or whatever it is, she'll get up and she'll make sure to try and put the ball in the back of the net. But I do think it was also another kind of glaring mistake from officials, and that was a bit of a theme this weekend. And I can understand Villa being frustrated. They were already 2-1 down, but you'd be frustrated by missing both of those.
Well, yes, you would, but there was also a penalty that wasn't given to
Russo should have had a penalty.
Arsenal. It was a clear penalty. So I think, the question about the officials is a big one. It's a discussion that we need to have. We need to have them full time, and we need them to be given every single. We've said it again and again on this podcast. They need to have every tool available to them to make it.
But they also need to be full time using those tools. So things like just bring in VAR. If they're not using it,
I don't actually mean VAR.
No, I know
given
you don't.
Given the tools in terms of their analysis and their fitness programs, not everything that comes with being a full-time referee, they need to have that in place to be able to perform to their best ability. VAR will come. I think it will come. We've seen it in the NWSL. Actually, in the NWSL, there's still problems with it. There was a goal last night.
The VAR over here.
Yeah, there was a goal last night that was, I can't remember what it was. It was either offside or onside, but it was given the other way around and it wasn't overturned. So I think it was... Yeah, that will come, but I think so. The discussion about the referees is kind of separate. But in this occasion, there were 2 big decisions that didn't go either way, so it kind of balances.
But I think if it had just been the Man City goal, if it had just been the Hayashi goal for West Ham that didn't get included, if it had just been in isolation, probably wouldn't be such a big talking point. But I think when you've got
5 or 6 throughout the weekend,
and that's where you're going to end up having the conversations. You can't not have the conversations. Anyway, it means that Arsenal are ahead. I feel like kind of secured now. They're
not quite.
Well, but Liverpool didn't win.
They're 8 points ahead of Liverpool, who are in 4th, and 9 ahead of United.
Spoiler alert: Liverpool got up to 4th. By the way, we're coming to that. I didn't say that. I'm saying it further down the table, but
so it means that they now need 8 points, I think, from the final 5 games.
Oh, did you work that out, or did you find that somewhere? You found that somewhere.
Thank you, Sylvan Janet on Twitter.
Sylvan, well done.
Thank you very much. 8 points for Champions League qualification, but obviously they don't need to get the 8 points if the others lose points, and it's
and with regards to the title race, something disastrous happens to the other 2, Arsenal need to keep winning. So, it was important after a shaky start.
And ahead of the cup final.
And ahead of the cup final. True. Right, Bristol 0, Spurs 1. Beth England with the goal really early on, 2 minutes in, and I kind of thought, oh God, is this going to be a long afternoon for Bristol? It wasn't. It was the only goal. She is the second player to reach 70 Barclays WSL goals behind Miedema, which is pretty impressive. Well done, Beth. I feel like Spurs did have chances to put the game to bed and they didn't, and Bristol will be looking at that going, that was a chance. That to keep them to 1-0 if they could have just nicked a goal.
But I think the problem at the moment is they went into that Brighton game being creatively strong and maybe a bit defensively weak. And now they've kind of pivoted to being really focused on being resilient and defensively strong. And it's kind of sacrificed their creativity. So they created 1 shot on target in the whole game. And, that at least before they were scoring goals. It doesn't help that the likes of Abby Harrison are still coming back to full fitness and Carrie Jones is now out. That's going to really hamper your kind of attacking threat. I think Shania Hill's picked up an injury yesterday as well. So
yeah, she did.
It's kind of that doesn't help when you're trying to build attacks and build creativity. But it does worry me that they went from a stage where they were always scoring goals to now the last 2 games not being able to create much whatsoever, despite being defensively strong.
Do you know what that sounds like? Spurs. They were really creative at the beginning of the season. Now they're edging games, being defensively strong, but not being as creative as they have been. And they're going to need to find that ahead of the semi-final of the FA Cup.
The problem for Bristol, more than Spurs, is that Spurs are comfortable, whereas Bristol don't have time to find that balance. I know. Whereas Spurs have been able to
I was trying to segue, and you just made me go backwards.
Sorry.
Going forward, speaking of Spurs, now I've just had to be really obvious about it, but I do think that's something they're going to need to maybe try and find a bit more of before this semi-final. I mean, Leicester seem a bit all over the shop at the moment as well, but that's an area that we were a bit like, okay, we're really excited about their creativity at the beginning of the season, and that's kind of maybe taking a bit of a backseat while they shore up a bit more defensively.
Yeah, but I think they are creating. They created yesterday. They just couldn't put it in the back.
Need to be clinical. Okay.
It's a theme for the teams within that area of the league. It's lack of clinical finishing.
So it means Bristol are still on 6 points, and they're still 6 points behind West Ham. So still games left. As long as that gap doesn't get bigger. Spurs are 3 points off United in 5th place. So they're having a good season. I mean, I get into an FA Cup semi-final for the first time. It's very exciting. Speaking of FA Cup semi-finalists, Leicester 2, Brighton 3. This was probably the surprise of the weekend for me. We have been stressing about Brighton on previous episodes purely because they just haven't seemed to be able to find any kind of form, really. I've been struggling a bit. But my God, they all chilled in the first half, and then in the second half, everyone went a bit wild.
It went a bit mad. I think Brighton did edge the first half. I think Sarri came close a couple of occasions. But it was a real competitive first half between the two. And both are really I think the thing with Brighton is because Leicester are built to create rather than defend, it gives them opportunities to maybe find spaces that they haven't done in recent games. So it means that they can kind of exploit a bit more, and especially on the transition. And we saw it with the Katie Robinson goal, and I think even the Elizabeth Turner one as well. They both broke through the spaces, so it allowed them at speed. So it allowed them that chance to creating those opportunities, create good chances. But yeah, Leicester still, they were creating as well.
Lovely goals from Rantalan.
But it was a great finish from Rantala, and we say it again and again. She's got a really good finish on her. But just watch that build up from Yuka Mimiki, because she is not the biggest player, and she just holds off the defender. She managed to wriggle away from her and then finds the space to pick the perfect pass. And I just thought it was absolutely delightful from her.
Well, yeah, it was a wild second half. The first goal for Brighton was a bit comical. There were arguments that there was a foul in there as well, but it was almost kind of that final Arsenal goal style comedy where it bounced off a load of people and eventually went into the back of the net. Brighton won't care. An important 3 points for them. We will get to what that means when I get to the table chat. After West Ham 0, Chelsea 2. Now, Chelsea returned to the top of the table with a +2 goal difference, 19 chances, 7 on target. Aggie Beaver-Jones scoring second minute or something. Beautiful team goal. Lovely ball in from LJ. Really nice. If you're going to watch a goal back, watch that one. But my God, West Ham could have been 3-1 up in the first half.
They could have been. They had their chances. I think Viv Asay missed a hat-trick of them. Kirsty Smith somehow put the ball wide of the far post from 10 yards out, unlocked. And then Riko Yueki hit the bar as well, I think. So there was a whole load of chances, and then obviously we get to the Hanaka Hayashi goal that should have stood, where she gets it in the back of the net.
Really nice goal as well.
She's well onside, and the referee's the assistant's flag goes up. So they had definitely had their chances, and they were the better team in the first half. I think Chelsea adjusted really well in the second, and the thing with Chelsea is they got their goal super early, so they were able to be a bit more comfortable in terms of not having to go all out, all guns blazing. And it allowed West Ham probably to utilise their tactics down the width, and it confused Chelsea a bit, because I think they were just like a bit let the foot of the gassy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas if they were still 0-0, they'd still be pushing forward.
But I also think that what made it difficult for West Ham was that the early goal meant they were always chasing. And that then made every chance they were snatching at it. And I think had that goal been allowed, I think they would have scored more, because their confidence will be up and there'd be almost less pressure on the chances. Whereas missing that one, they just kept then missing every other one that came afterwards. And it was like the longer the game went on, you just felt Chelsea going to get another one.
And then in the second half, Chelsea were leggy, and you can understand that.
Yeah.
That was like I think it was their 6th game in March. West Ham have played 3.
Yeah.
So there's quite a contrast in there, and they're playing every 3 days, and they've got the squad to do that, but it does mean that you do get tired.
And you do still have to factor in they do have key injuries.
Yeah. So but I think the legs that they brought on in the second half, they brought on Cuthbert off the bench, who made a difference, Macario as well, and then Ramirez came back from injury. So I think that all added extra impetus, and in the second half they were the better team. West Ham, they kind of stopped that threat down the width from West Ham. They kind of fixed that problem, and they just West Ham were a bit more lax in the second half. They kept losing the ball quite a lot as well. So.
I do think they struggle to put a performance in across 90 minutes, and normally they're a bit shaky in the first half and better in the second, and I think it was the other way around, and then not capitalising on their opportunities, that second half just got more and more difficult. In the press conference before the match, I asked Emma Hayes about Newskin, and she was kind of speaking about what the job she can do in midfield, and she was kind of saying she's better at some things, say, than maybe Aaron Cuthbert, and then she said, Aaron Cuthbert's going to kill me.
Better goal scorer.
Yeah, she was like, Aaron's going to kill me for saying that, and she'll prove it on Sunday. So I said, great, so we can expect an Aaron Cuthbert banger then on Sunday, and she was like, yeah, and sure enough, up she pops and scores another wonder goal.
Just to prove Emma Hayes wrong.
7th of the season. So yeah, well done to her. But understandably, Rhian Skinner was absolutely raging afterwards. It wasn't that one decision that made them lose the game, but it does have a big impact on the game, and it could have been 1-1. It could have had an impact on their future chances and all that kind of stuff. And I think her frustration is the Liverpool game, there were 2 goals that shouldn't have been. There was the Tottenham game where there was a goal that shouldn't have been. And when you keep putting in performances and not getting rewards and having those decisions multiple times against you, you can understand her.
And she said in the post-match interview, getting an apology after the game doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change anything for us. Like, you can be as sorry as you want to be, but the fact is the result's gone. The points aren't on the board, and at the end of the day, people's jobs will be on the line, because
she's still in 11th. West Ham didn't look like a team.
They're still in 11th, and also she also made very clear that the players put in such hard work every week to train for these situations, and they can only control what they can control. That's a cliche in football, but they can. And then they have it kind of that hard work ruined a little bit for them by decisions that are out of their control and that are wrong. So
yeah, I can understand.
She was understandably a bit frustrated.
2 other points to note: Katrina Gorey off injured, which could be a big blow. Hopefully it's nothing too serious. And on the positive side, Fran Kirby's 200th appearance for Chelsea. So well done to her. 12 major trophies, bloody hell. And she made an appearance as well, which was great to see. It does mean the table, we've got Chelsea and Man City both on 43, but Chelsea edging the goal difference by 2. Arsenal in 3rd on 37. Liverpool have overtaken United and are in 4th spot on 29, with the Red Devils below them on 28. And then down the bottom of the table, not much has changed for West Ham and Bristol. The latter still on 6 points and the Hammers on 12. Brighton's win has put them up to 8th on 17 points, with Leicester below them on 16 and Everton on 15. So it's still neck and neck at the top. Right, quick championship roundup. Birmingham 2, Lewis 0.
Championship, you let me down this weekend, though.
Well, there was a very exciting one. Hang on.
It was a very exciting one, but
You're interrupting my flow here. Blackburn 2, Southampton 1. You can tell me how disappointed you are when I've read them out. Charlton 1, London City Lionesses 2. That was a very good comeback. Palace 3, Watford 0. Sheffield 5, Reading 1. Sunderland 5, Durham 3. Bloody hell. Go on now, you can tell me.
I'm just used to the whole host of them being all
over the place.
And we only got one. Well, I guess
it does mean we could have a 5-horse race again.
Sunderland Durham was pretty mad, but I think the one, obviously the really big one that was a surprise, was Charlton London City.
Yeah, but it could impact the table a little bit. It does feel like maybe we've a 5-horse race again. We've got Sunderland on top on 37 points, 19 games. Palace on 36 points, 18 games. Birmingham on 33 points, 18 games. Southampton on 33 points, 19 games. And Charlton on 33 points with 18 played. So maybe back to that 5-horse race. I feel like this is another week where I've had to say 33 a lot as an Irish person. And I think I'm just proving that I can actually say it.
Birmingham have had a really good week, by the way.
They
beat
have.
Reading midweek and they beat Lewis on Sunday, and that's adding a bit more form to their run into the final last few games of the season.
Yeah. Now down the bottom it means Watford are on 12 with 18 games and Lewis are on 16 with 19 games played and Reading on 18 with 18 games played.
2 of those 3 go down.
So that is definitely one to keep an eye on. Okay, right, a quick look ahead to the Conti Cup final on Sunday. As I said, first piece of silverware up for grabs, which is very exciting. It's Arsenal versus Chelsea again. The Reds beat Chelsea last year 3-1, and then in the league both teams have absolutely hammered each other once. So quite tricky to call. How do you see this going? Because I feel like looking at Arsenal's recent performances and knowing Chelsea at this late stage of the season, it makes me lean more towards Chelsea.
Yes. I think logical thinking would go Chelsea, just because Chelsea are Chelsea. And even if they've played 20 games in a week, obviously that's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. If they've played a lot in recent weeks, they know how to get things done. My one slight difference from that is that I remember this time last year.
We said the same thing.
And we said the same thing, and we said Chelsea were going to win it, and Arsenal weren't in the best of form. And Chelsea scored in the first, 5 minutes or something, 10 minutes of the game?
Yeah.
I remember you messaging me, because I wasn't there, and saying...
Oh God, I think this might be one-sided.
This might be one-sided.
And not as big a battle as we thought.
It's over already, and then suddenly Arsenal turn it around. So I wouldn't be so sure. I do also... I think I've said to you, since that loss at Stamford Bridge for Arsenal, I think it actually puts them in a better position for this game than before, and that might be weird to some people, but I think it's like when you play people back to back, and I think the loser always learns more than the winner.
Yeah.
So Arsenal won't be making the same mistakes again. Well, if they do, that's very, very, very much on them if they can't fix the problems from that game. And I think there were so many different elements to that night at Stamford Bridge that's going to be completely different on Sunday.
Well, we'll see. As somebody tweeted, Arsenal, please consider staying the night in Wolverhampton rather than driving up.
And bring your socks.
And bring your 2 socks, 2 pairs, different colours, all different colours.
No, but I think you can't call it. That's the beauty of these matchups between these 2 teams at the moment, is it does go from one to the other very quickly. Mm-hmm. So while, yes, Chelsea are favourites, you just can't call it.
Well, it could be Emma Hayes' chance to get her hands on some silverware, first piece of silverware of the season, because they are still fighting fires on 4 fronts. God, that was a real... What's that called? Alliteration. Love that. Okay, before we come to your moment of the weekend, we've had lots of questions in, so thank you for that. So we're going to run through a couple of them. I really like this one because Sam, I think, asked this during our live last week, maybe, or whenever it was, about signings at the beginning of the season, when we talked about who's nailed it with the signings, who's the most exciting signings, all that kind of business, and how we'd reflect on them now, and if we've changed our opinions, or, you know, not necessarily changed our opinions, but like, I really like that question. But some of the big ones, Van Damselaar to Villa, Nuskin, Fischl at Chelsea, Lacasse Russo at Arsenal, Jace Mallard at United, just some of the examples. I think for me, Emma Hayes did say not enough people were talking about Nuskin. She was right, but I don't think anyone expected her to have to play the role she's now playing. And I think what she's been able to do and fill in so many different roles would probably make her one of the signings of the season. Yes,
I agree. I think she's been... Yeah, I wouldn't say like she was a standout signing of the summer window for sure. I think Emma Hayes recruited really well in that summer window, bringing in young players who, you know, you've got the likes of Mia Fischl. I know she's injured now, but like bringing young players for the future. And a lot of the signings at that time were made with future years in mind. So someone like Captain, the Dutch player, she was signed and then went straight back on loan out. And it's all about being able to have them on the books, but getting them ready for future years. So it was more thinking about the future. Someone like Nuskin really added something now to the team. And especially probably in an unpredictable way because of the injury crisis at Chelsea. But elsewhere, any others that you maybe didn't think would have as big an impact, or maybe even thought would have a bigger impact and haven't? I would say, like, holistically, I think my feelings about whether clubs had good signing, sort of bad signing windows remains the same, generally. Like, I thought Liverpool had a really strong window. Yeah. I think even more so now, having seen the likes of maybe Mary Hobinger play more often and more frequently, I've realised how strong that window kind of was and how much they did add to that. So I had the initial thought that they'd done pretty well, but I think there will be surprises throughout the season. You know, someone like Uta Randler, who wasn't really on the radar before she went to Leicester and has really made her mark this season and really settled in. And yeah, there's always going to be surprises like that, I think.
Well, good question, Sam. One I'd like to delve into more. Erica wants to know which Champions League atmosphere has been the best so far this season. I know what you're going to say. Oh, I don't know what you're going to say.
I really like Bran.
Yeah.
Bran was fun.
Yeah, the fans in Bran were amazing. You may have seen them in the Barcelona game.
They were really good and they were bouncing away all the way through.
Hacken were similar.
Hacken was similar.
Because it was a
Bran,
small
I think
crowd,
I just had a really fond memories of that trip. I also one of my favourite nights of the year was last week.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
It was Ajax, and I thought the crowd were brilliant there, but it was more about the whole event as well.
The stadium was lovely. The people that worked at the stadium were lovely.
Yeah, we were in Amsterdam.
The facilities were lovely.
But
you
honestly,
were getting hot chocolate served to you in the press box.
But honestly, it makes such a difference to the whole experience if you've got nice people around you. And we're travelling with a nice group, but also everyone was so polite and friendly and yeah, you compare it to some of the treatment that we get over here from stewards, where everyone seems to want to be Aggie at points.
We had the rudest steward at Aston Villa that we had to deal with yesterday, and it was just like at the end of a long weekend we just did not have the time for it, so it was very frustrating.
It was a very much give a man a cap situation.
And then we came out of the stadium and they'd all left, so we all just had to figure out our own way out of the car park, and everyone was trying to leave at the same time out of the same exit, and it took 45 minutes and it was a nightmare.
But yeah, so it makes such a difference to your experiences. Like, we've been to Spain where they're not great.
They smoke in some places. That was I didn't like that.
No, but they're not great with directions or helping you or wanting.
You're talking about the Nations League final.
Yeah.
There was nobody outside to ask where we're going. We did
but also they're not very keen to help, and they just sort of shrug your shoulders. Whereas the experience at Ajax, the whole thing holistically was just a brilliant experience. Yeah,
but I think atmosphere wise, you're right. Bran, my memories of Bran though was getting soaked to the skin, so mine was less good. But I really enjoyed the fans. I really liked Hacken. It was a smaller stadium, and it was quite full, and it was noisy, and I really enjoyed it. Those ones really felt like the whole town is getting behind you kind of vibes, which was really nice. Okay, MSILVWN. I don't know if that's pronounced a certain way, but Daphne Van Domselaar at Arsenal, could it really happen?
It could. I think it could. They are in the market for a goalkeeper.
We all know that.
And I don't see why not. I think it just depends on, I guess, what Villa want to do. If they're becoming a selling club, then it's
that clause, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if it's in every contract, but if they decide they want to sell, if the money's more important to them than the player, keeping the players on, then that's a problem and that's an issue within the club, and there's nothing you can do about that. So I think Arsenal would be in for her. Why not? We've seen what she can do on the big stage for the Netherlands. She's done it so many times, and I think she hasn't been helped this season by the fact that Villa have been a bit out of sorts.
And her defence has been a bit.
Defensively.
Yeah.
And that's not been great.
Okay, last one. Bupanes? You know who you are. Just a small question. What is United's biggest challenge to getting results against top 4 teams, and do they need a new coach? The thing is, right, last season United were getting, I'd say top 3 because I would include them in the top 4. They were getting results, other than Chelsea, against top 3 teams. I think this season there's been a change, and I think
they've been found out a little bit tactically, and I think they've got players not in form. That doesn't help,
but it happens, so maybe rotate.
It happens. There's a lack of rotation. I think they bought in the summer, they spent a lot of money, and they probably didn't spend it in the right places. They went pretty heavy on attackers. They need a more defensive solidity and more midfielders, I think, to be able to. But you need to be able to rotate when things aren't going well, and that's not happening at the moment. Mark Skinner's contract is up in the summer. I would imagine if it stays on the course that it's going on, it won't be renewed, I would imagine, because I think United should, and if they don't, that's a problem,
be
They
ambitious.
should have high hopes of getting back into that top 3 if they can't do it. But it's not just Mark, to be honest. It's the whole club. They need to be recruiting,
better
investing, not messing people around on the contracts. There was that Charlotte Harper story the other day about Alessia Russo contract and how they reneged on it, and had almost shaken hands on it, and then had to pull it out from under her. So it's not a good look, and I think there needs to be some serious questions around the operations in the football club.
Okay. That's all we have time for in terms of the questions we're taking. So apologies if we didn't get to yours, but keep sending them in. We will try and get to them next week. Sophie, we need to do your moment of the weekend before we go.
Okay, so I can't pick her first goal because it was technically should have been disallowed.
Okay.
But I'm going to pick her second goal, Jess Park's second goal. She is a City kid. She, came up from the academy set up. She's been a lifelong City fan. And for her to score her first WSL goals for the club on the Etihad stage, I think it's just magical.
Perfect note to end on. Lovely, good one. As always, guys, thank you so much for listening. Again, don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you all next Monday.